As I just now said that in chapter number 13, we mentioned that how Purusha wants to enjoy the Prakriti or the material nature and forgetting that it is not for his enjoyment and not only enjoy but also exercise proprietorship or ownership of the material nature. Whereas it does not belong to him, first place. Secondly, it is not for his enjoyment but for Lord's own external energy meant for his own Lord's enjoyment. So this is how things go wrong, and thereafter, when the material energy comes in contact with the soul gets contaminated or conditioned and it starts behaving in a particular fashion, in a mode or particular mode. And that mode is either mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. So, as later we will come to know that there is always a competition between the three modes. One wants to dominate at some or other point of time based on the desire of the individual or living entity. So this is the rope the guna, three guna, that is Rajasic, Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. The guna in Sanskrit, it also means rope, and the rope we know is used for binding. So the rope binds the soul of condition, and soul becomes conditioned. So soul, otherwise, it is pristine, pure, and clean, and it is uncontaminated because it is part and parcel of Lord. So how soul could be contaminated with the three modes of material nature? But because of the desire of living entity, it becomes contaminated and becomes bound by three modes of material nature. So this is the, and how these three modes of material nature act and what is their after effect or the result of contamination of soul. We'll come to know about this thing in the coming verses. In chapter number 13, we saw that 13.1, Arjuna's 6 questions were asked: Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetragya, and Jnana, Jnanam. Now, Krishna answers all these questions, and lastly, he mentions that what is the knowledge, what is the Jnanam, and how the process of Jnanam, how the karmic people or the yogic and also the Jnani people can also attain this knowledge. But their long route for gaining this knowledge is very, very long and very tough and cannot be established any achieved in this single birth or single life period time. And for devotee, it was very, very easy. This is what Lord told earlier in the chapter number 13. For repeated interruptions, I'm sorry. Then Krishna answers all those 6 aspects. Prakriti, Purush, Kshetra, and Prakriti, Purush was answered in the last. That was 1 and 2 was answered in verse number 20 to 26. Prakriti, Purush, and their union, how they get integrated, how the Purush wants to enjoy the Prakriti, and that is the beginning of the problem. So Gyan Chakshu, how to get away, know the real position of Prakriti, Purush, Kshetra, Kshetragya, and Jnana, how can one clearly know, one who knows their role and identity and the characteristics and the mechanism of interaction of these 6 aspects, that is called a person who knows has a Gyan Chakshu, has the vision of knowledge. So this vision of knowledge, how people can achieve, we just now learned that people can achieve this Gyan Chakshu or the vision of knowledge and the real roles of these three aspects of nature by so many means. For devotee, it was easiest for devotee, as we mentioned, not for a Nishkam Karma Yogi, not for a Ashtanga Yogi, and not for a Jnani. And thus this chapter now, as I mentioned, how does this, when the soul comes in contact with material nature, how does it get bound by the three modes of material nature? So what are three modes of material nature? How they bind the soul and how one can get freedom from this kind of binding. This is discussed in chapter number 14. And that is three modes of the modes of material nature. So 1 to 4 describes the liberation and conditioning of the living, how one is, and the knowledge in the last chapter, we remember that the knowledge is the basis of liberation. But despite this knowledge, we come in contact with material nature and get contaminated. The soul becomes conditioned. So conditioning of living entity, that one point is must be remembered that living entity does not mean for jiva. It means for soul always. Whenever living entity is, that means soul. They are referring to soul. So 5 to 9, description of the binding of the pure soul by three modes of nature. 10 to 13, recognizing the supremacy, a mode within a person. Some, supremacy means there are three modes of material nature, but some people are always in a mode of goodness. Only infrequently they come under mode of passion, but sometimes they are most of the times in mode of goodness. Then people in mode of passion and people in the mode of ignorance. This is how supremacy. But within the three modes, always there is a competition to dominate. One wants to dominate over the other. A person is in a mode of goodness, and he is attracted by many things, material things, material objects. So mode of passion becomes dominant on that time. Or one wants to, there is a sattvic person, but he has got a friend who is used to taking liquor or alcohol. So they are very close friends. So one day, what will happen, this sattvic man or the person who is in mode of goodness would definitely like to go to the bar and taste a little, not consume. A desire within him will arise that why not? He enjoys so much by drinking this liquor. So why should not I taste it also? And that is the beginning of Karanam Good Sangosha. In 13.22, this word was used, that how this get the cause of our suffering or miseries is because we get the cause is because our soul gets contaminated or conditioned by three modes of material nature. So then actions and death within the modes. What happens? A person dies in the mode of goodness, a person dies in the mode of passion or ignorance. But the Srila Prabhupada says one has to, in 19 to 27, Lord Krishna has also described, and Srila Prabhupada, he has laid lot of emphasis on transcending the three modes of nature. That is Sattva Buddha. That means neither mode of goodness, nor passion, not something transcendental to these three modes and rising above three modes. That is the objective of human life. So this is how we are going to study in chapter number 4. Yes, Riya Mataji, please continue.
Jnana Susa, whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and material nature. Without the touch of superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. But actually, after the destruction of the body, both the soul and the supersoul exist, and they go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. Because of desires, one is put into difficult circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. When one sees that the various bodies of living entities arise due to different desires of the individual soul and do not actually belong to the soul itself, one actually sees. Similarly, the living entity, even though situated in varieties of bodies, is aloof from them due to his subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with the body and how is out of it after the destruction of the body. Consciousness is the proof of the presence of the soul. A sunshine or light is the proof of the presence of the sun. Supersoul, situated in all bodies as the friend of the individual soul, is conscious of all bodies. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. So this is a summary what we learned in chapter number 13. We know that there is annihilation or destruction. All the souls and supersoul, they merge into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when there is creation, the soul and supersoul again come out and assume certain forms. The soul particularly assumes certain kind of physical body or life form, and the super soul accompanies it. So they are, but the body, of course, perishable material, it is finished completely, or it assumes the soul and super soul thereafter assuming new dress or new life form. So now how this super soul and soul both are residing in the material body, but we do not know it. We can't see it, and we can't even properly comprehend it. So what happens that this soul, why does a person become dead? Because when the soul leaves the body, the consciousness goes. And consciousness is the feature of soul rather, or the characteristic of feature of soul. Whenever their soul is in the body, we have consciousness. As soon as soul leaves the body, consciousness is gone. Yes, Mataji? 1 to 4.
The liberation and conditioning of living entities.
Yes. This is first verse. Param
Param bhuya prabhakshyami jnanam 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 uttamam yaj jnadva munaya sarve param siddhim ito gatha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection." Hare Krishna.
Okay. So the Lord is telling again the same thing. Raj Vidya Raj Guhyam Param Idam Uttamam. The same kind of pure knowledge, the king of knowledge, the most confidential knowledge is being given to Arjuna here again in chapter 14. And what is that more? That is the knowledge about three modes of material nature. The supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages, and by knowing this knowledge, many sages in the past have also got liberation of complete perfection. So how to understand this chapter, which is because in chapter number 13 also I mentioned that it is a philosophical analysis. Now by philosophical analysis only we can understand chapter number 14. And what is the result of understanding this or knowing this knowledge? One advantage of benefit of knowing this knowledge is that sages have attained supreme perfection. Second is there is freedom for material entanglement. And third is when there is freedom from material entanglement, then there is development of devotional service or bhakti. So this is why it is very important, and one attains a transcendental nature like Krishna qualitatively. When person attains a qualitative nature of Lord Krishna, then he stands at a transcendental platform. Though quantitatively, it is incomparable, but because we are just mind to spark, and Krishna is the whole. He is Purnam. So, in fact, we are a spark only of that Purnam. The result is qualitatively we may attain this transcendental. The meaning of this verse is that one has to transgress or rise above the three modes of material nature and rise to the platform of transcendence. And when transcendence is there, then one attains qualities which are prevalent in Lord Krishna, which are present in Krishna. So qualitatively one becomes like Krishna, but quantitatively, of course, he remains very, very minor person. Yes, 13th chapter.
Through knowledge, freedom from material entanglement, association with the modes of nature, living entity gets entangled in this material world. 14th chapter, Supreme Lord explains what the modes of nature are, how they act, how they bind, and how they give liberation. Lord says this knowledge is superior to knowledge given so far. It has helped various great sages attain perfection and get transferred to the spiritual world. Hare Krishna.
So this is the summary of chapter. Three modes of nature, how they act, how they bind their soul, and how can one get liberation from the clutches of these three modes of material nature. Verse number 2, yes, ma'am.
Idam gyan mupakshitya mama sadharma mya magataha sar sargopi nopajayante pralaye na vyatanti cha. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution.
So by becoming fixed, this is what I just now mentioned, that at the time of dissolution or when the creation is being finished, at that time, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. That means one becomes fearless so far as death is concerned, because he knows he is standing at the transcendental platform and he is not going to re-enter into the cycle of birth and death. So that kind of confidence or that kind of faith person develops, and this is what happens after knowing this knowledge. Yes, Pataji. On acquiring perfect transcendental states. Priya Mataji, are you there? Swayam Prabha Mataji, would you like to continue? Hare Krishna.